Okay, thank you. Like I've been 20. That, I feel like I've missed a lot of these recently. It could be better.
We're gonna get started. I'm the second one of the Main Street Task Force for Wednesday, March 19th. Can we please call the roll?
Chair Angela,
President.
Vice Chair Calegian,
Present.
Lieutenant Brown,
Present.
Marissa Lopes, absent, Rachel Peterson,
I'm here.
Peter Kamara is absent, Thomas Badway, absent, Sarah Engel,
Here.
Jessica Lance,
Here.
Nate Urso,
Here.
Sean Raymond,
Present.
Rosie Jaswell.
Here.
We have 9 present and 3 absent, we have 1.
Awesome, thank you so much. We're gonna hop right into the presentation because we have Avari and Prism on, I think on Zoom, maybe?
I'm helping Brian get the link right now.
Okay. So while we wait, why don't we go around and just, because I've gotten this feedback, we've talked about it before, people, when they do watch the Zoom, which yay, for people who watch the Zoom afterward, you can't tell who we each are, because they can't read our placards from there. So if we can just go around the room and you can say your name and what constituency you are, I'll model it. I'm Sue Agarwal, I'm the chair of the task force, and I'm a counselor for Board 3, which is the northern part of the east side. The next.
Sure, Bill Brown, Providence Police. Good evening, Sean Raymond, Rhode Island DOT.
I'm Rachel Peterson. I am a Ward 3 resident. Hi everyone, I'm Rosie Jaswell. I'm a Green and Complete Streets Advisory Council representative.
Angela Harris, First Deputy City Clerk.
Marissa Capaldi, Assistant Clerk.
Kyle Delgado, Director of Project Management, City Council.
Sorry.
Trisha Pedriani, Policy Analyst for the Policy Team on the City Council, and I serve as the pleasure of the City Council.
Ruth Cochio, Assistant City Solicitor.
Thank you for being here.
Jess Lance, Director of Special Projects for the City of Providence Department of Planning and Development.
Nate Urso, I manage traffic engineering. It's a division in the Department of Public Works for the city.
Sarah Engel, Planning Director at RIPTA, and it's neighbor of North Main Street.
Jenny Vivian, Vice Chair of the Task Force and representing the Providence Streets Coalition.
I'm Director of Community, you want to sit at the table? I'm fine. Okay. You're welcome here. I feel.
I'm right here.
Awesome. So thanks everyone for being here. And it does look like we have Brian on the line. So if we want to promote him to talk and read agenda item 1 into the record, please.
Presentation by Avari and Prism on lighting project. Presentation by Brian Woodbury, Prism Streetlights.
Awesome. So we've talked about this at prior meetings that there is a lighting project underway. To increase, it's been a long day, to increase lighting along North Main Street, which we've identified as one of the a major safety hazard. So I'm really excited for Brian to be joining us today, and also Director Arjunian from Public Property, thank you for being here, Kyle and Trisha for all their amazing work. So Brian, if you can hear us and you want to hop on, we would love to hear a status update on where everything's at, and we really appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, can everyone hear me okay?
No, great.
Okay. My name is Brian Woodbury. I am the Executive Director of Prism Streetlights. I've been working with the city on improvements along the North Main Street corridor. So wanted to just give a brief update about where we stand right now. Honestly, not a lot has happened since you guys' February meeting, because we're kind of in that sort of planning and waiting for product to arrive and waiting for the weather to cooperate sort of long term there in New England. So right now we're just kind of doing a lot of background work. The decorative streetlights that we are planning to put into the median area between Olney and Doyle. Those fixtures are on order. I was working with my contractor today to put together some pricing on the strategy for the installation of those fixtures. So the approach we're going to use is we will put in some sort of a control box there in one of those medians, because as you know, it is kind of one median, but is broken up by those sort of U-turn or cut through lanes. So we would put a control box in one of those medians that would essentially run a loop of power to all of those lights in the median. This will simplify the connection point with National Grid rather than having to connect each one of those individual streetlights or a string of them into a manhole and have to, excavate the roadway or in order to access, uh, multiple connection points. So that's the approach that we are designing at this stage. Our plan is going to be to do what is called a GPR on those medians. GPR stands for ground penetrating radar, because there are gas lines and gas mains present in those medians. So we want to be very, very careful not to interfere with that or any of the other electrical infrastructure that's located in that median. So I should be able to provide pricing over to the city for that effort tomorrow. I did send over some preliminary quotes today for the proposed new lighting up north of the burial ground. So what we're proposing there is to add roughly 36 new streetlights on existing utility poles. So more or less anywhere you see a utility pole up in that area that does not have a street light will end up getting a street light. With extra attention being paid for areas where there's crosswalks or additional foot traffic, or utilizing the data we have for pedestrian or bicycle accidents. So we submitted the request to Rhode Island Energy. It's probably been several months ago now, to get permission to mount streetlights on those poles. We're still waiting for their permission. We do have a great deal of hardware on hand that in order that we placed when we started the project back last fall. So as soon as we start getting approval for those locations, we should be able to start installing those relatively quickly. And again, this is not something we necessarily have to wait for changes in the weather or the lift in the moratorium for excavation. Additionally, we are looking to add new wooden streetlight poles along the southbound lanes of North Main, adjacent to the burial ground. So there are some existing lights there now, but the spacing is pretty wide. So we are looking to increase the number of lights along that stretch of roadway. So as it stands now, we have 11 locations that we have requested for National Grid. We are back and forth with them regarding the specifics of where those will be located and how we plan on handling the installation. So again, awaiting their approval, and they essentially have to go through an engineering process to make sure that our design, based on where we plan to string the wires and make the point of connection, they have to make sure that the existing transformers and other electrical infrastructure will support the additional load. So that's going to be a little fluid, just because we want to make sure that we're doing it in the most aesthetic way possible, which in my opinion is stringing the primary power line, well, secondary power line, I should say, parallel to the roadway, so that you're not having a line run across North Main, both southbound and northbound lanes of North Main, in order to access power at a utility pole that's on the northbound side. So that's what we're working on now. Let's see. We do still have some outstanding, power issues that we're continuing to try to work on with Rhode Island Energy. Those likely will start to see a little more progress come spring, whenever the moratorium is lifted for, cutting concrete and asphalt. I was prepared to show you the Avari model. I'm not sure if my sharing my screen is something that we can manage, or if that's something we best reserve for another time.
Yeah, the clerks are making sure that you have permissions, but you should be able to do that in just a second, I think. And Brian, while they're doing that, a quick question, this is Sue, what is the timeline for the Doyle only, I always say only wrong, sorry, the Doyle only, whatever, pedestrian level lighting, like when are you thinking that that would get installed? Is that like a springtime? April, May situation, do you think?
Yes, so ultimately at this stage, we anticipate receiving the hardware for the actual fixtures and poles that we've ordered. We anticipate receiving those probably sometime, I'm guessing early to mid-April. In the meantime, we will continue working through the permitting process with both the city as well as the state. My contractor met with the electrical inspector for the city today, and discussed the plan there.
Okay. We
It's
just
not-
Oh, screen share.
Did you, is he still there?
I mean, it's got three participants.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's panelists.
All her panelists. These are with panelists.
Is he muted in panelist?
Not him.
Yeah, they,
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Brian, sorry, you got muted, no, below.
No, below.
Ask to unmute, yeah. You have to unmute.
There we go. I think I'm
Sorry,
unmuted.
we were trying to make you a panelist, you should also be able to share your screen, I think.
I believe that I can.
You might have to stop.
It's
Oh, you were screen sharing, yeah, so stop.
someone. Someone else has to. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, now you should be able to, Brian.
All right. Sorry that it's asking me for permissions, so I'm just have to grant permissions real quick.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Brian, it's Kyle Delgado. In the interim, are we all set with permits? We have, stakeholders here from RIDOT as well as our traffic engineer. Are there any permits that we need to make sure we put in for these spring installs?
Well, we're going to handle the electrical permit directly with the electrical inspector for the city. But as far as any other permitting, I have reached out to Bryant Anderson last week in order to try to connect with him regarding the permitting process, and I haven't been able to connect with him thus far.
Yeah, Nick, is there any guidance you might be able to give on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, that is, I don't know who owns that. You
If
can
you
be,
talk for the owl, I think it'll be better.
who owns the median in that part? We own the street there, as far as North Main Street goes. I can tell I can tell you, if you can just try to, I'm not sure what you're gonna do in terms of occupying a travel lane to do your work. But if you are, you probably should submit a permit, just so you have the proper traffic controls. I mean, the travel lanes right up against the median, I'm not sure if you thought that through in terms of your work area.
So,
So Brian, if you submitted anything to Brian Anderson, can you reply and then CC me and Kyle, please? And we can follow up to make
Yeah.
sure it moves. through.
Yes, send it to me and I'll follow up.
Yeah.
So yeah, our part of the reason why we planned for using that median, because we thought it would be the least impactful in terms of roadway traffic. If we're using an excavator there, then we may need to block, one lane of traffic in one direction. while we sort of excavate the power loop. That being said, because of the strategy to run the power through all like, what is it, 3 or 4 sections of that median, we will need to excavate through those sort of turnabout lanes. So that would be sort of the greatest impact as far as, the traffic pattern is concerned.
Yeah, if you can just kind of think through your work area. And then we'll respond what type of interaction permits, this being a city project, we won't charge a permit fee, but just
Okay.
um.
Yeah, I just wanted to connect
Yeah,
because I don't generally fill out a lot of permits, so I just wanted to sort of talk through the process with you and, make sure I understand and I'm doing it in the appropriate fashion and collecting all the information you need so there's not a ton of back and forth. So if we could have a connection meeting, in advance, just talk through the
Yep.
process in general, that would be very helpful to me.
I'll be happy to coordinate that.
Thanks, Pat.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can, thank you.
Okay, so this is the University Marketplace area. So this is what you're seeing right now is a representation of the current lighting levels. So blue, just to recap for those of you that don't recall, blue essentially means, low lighting levels, insufficient lighting. Yellow is kind of what you're really primarily looking for on just general roadways. But in the areas where you're going to have crosswalks and, pedestrian vehicle bicycle interactions, you really want sort of more of this sort of orangish color, or even the red. So this is current lighting conditions, and what we're proposing is to place decorative streetlights in a loop around these, essentially around these islands. And so I'll now toggle on. I'm going to toggle that off for a second, and then these are the proposed changes. So once the decorative streetlights go in, these are the lighting levels that you should expect. So as you can see, it's a massive increase in lighting. We are still sort of exploring placement, finalizing placement of some of these lights, just to make sure things like you can see this crosswalk here is in the lighter area. So again, this is a working model to just make sure that we're putting the lights in the most appropriate place. And as you can see, where we have them proposed now, they're dramatically improving the lighting levels all along this corridor. Now, this model is also based on, the preliminary lighting that I provided to Avari. So the model number for this fixture was like a 60p, which means it can manage about 12,000 lumens of light for each decorative. When I ordered the streetlights, I actually ordered them as a P100, which can actually provide much higher illumination levels. Our intent is going to be to sort of operate them at this level, but I wanted to ensure that we had some sort of upward flexibility in the event that we put the lights in and people feel that they're still not bright enough. I didn't want to end up putting in hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of hardware only to find that the lighting is insufficient. Now, I believe this will be sufficient, and if we run the lights at a lower capacity than what they're capable of, it will extend the life of the fixtures. And again, it provides you some flexibility to adjust the lighting levels up and down because we included an adjustment dialer in the fixture as well. So that's the plan at this point. And so the other thing I wanted to show you was This is the database that we currently use to manage the streetlights for the city of Providence. So this is what our field workers use for just managing day-to-day work on an iPad. So you can see again, these purple dots represent where the new lights will be located in that University Marketplace area. You'll see some other dots in here, gray dots, where we've marked things such as manholes and things of that nature that we need to either avoid, or those are places where we can potentially draw power. The other thing you'll see on this map is these purple dots along this section along the burial ground are representative of what I mentioned about the new poles that we are putting in. So you can see there's some pretty big spaces. The blue dots are existing streetlights. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit so you can get a little better picture of it. So you see there are some significant gaps here. So we want to put lights in between. This yellow dot represents a pole that exists that just doesn't have a light on it. So the idea would be to add a light to that pole. So again, sort of doubling the number of poles along that stretch in order to improve the lighting.
A quick question, if you don't mind. Oh, do you mind?
Say it again?
Quick question, this is Sue again. When we're still thinking for the lights that get attached to the poles, they'll, like we discussed this was like so many weeks ago now, like we'll protect from light pollution going into the burial ground, right? Because that's like a active wildlife home.
So the fixtures, we can install backlight shields on them because
Okay.
these will be, installed essentially adjacent to the in the area between the sidewalk and the roadway.
Okay, cool.
But yes, backlight shields can be installed on these fixtures without a problem.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
And Brian, this is Kyle again, kind of the same question. This area seems to be on the RIDOT jurisdiction, right? So we would need permits for this as well.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
I think, when you set that meeting, you can
Oh,
have
yeah.
some of our permitting section be involved as well. We can kind of go over all what's required for each area.
Yeah,
Perfect.
good call.
Yep. And then all these yellow dots along here represent where new mast arms and new fixtures will be installed on the northern part of the corridor. So these are existing utility poles. These we can install. We can start installing these as soon as we get permission from Rhode Island Energy.
And not to keep interrupting with questions, but I'm gonna do one more. What's been the response timing from Rhode Island Energy, and is that something you need help with, like any nudging?
They have been just sort of as slow as they historically are. We did throw a lot of stuff at them. When we asked for permission to add lights to 36 to 40 poles along that stretch, that does require a good deal of time from their engineering to go out and look at what currently exists on those poles, what the power capacity is of the lines that exist at those locations. We have had a little bit of engagement and back and forth with them lately, clarifying some of the locations, particularly for the new poles. But yes, anything that you all can do working with the city's representative, Roseanne, to help encourage movement on this would be, greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
And Roseanne is essentially taken over for Lori Spangler. So that's who your, current rep is for the city.
Councilwoman, if you don't have her contact info, I do.
Okay, great then. Thank you.
So the only other thing I wanted to address, and I don't know how much time I was supposed to be given here, but Kyle had.
You have another thing, so keep going until we have to lose you.
Sorry, I couldn't understand that, but I'm just.
Keep going. If you have time, we have time.
Okay. The other thing that Kyle thought that we should potentially address was, some challenges we may see as it relates to some of the side streets. So I'm going to go back to the current lighting conditions. These P's and the arrows represent where there have been incidents with pedestrians or bicycle. And the arrows sort of represent sort of the what we know of how the incident occurred. So, this here was the B here was somebody was coming south and then turned and hit a bicyclist that was, along the northbound side. So one of the challenges that we face here is, these sort of high speed right turns going northbound or southbound and then turning onto a side street, but you see these gaps between, the primarily yellow along the roadway and then the side streets, and there tends to be a gap between North Main and whatever the side street is. The challenge we face with these is the fact that a lot of times on these side streets, the first utility pole is a ways up the roadway. So let me show you an example of that on Grandview Street, for example. So this here, if you can see my cursor, this is heading northbound on North Main Street, and then now I'm in the northbound lane but facing southbound. This is Grandview Street, and you can see there is a light here at the corner. There's a crosswalk, so you could potentially anticipate someone coming up this northbound lane and making sort of a high speed right turn here, right? This light is designed to light the roadway, not necessarily this crosswalk that's over to the side. You are going to get some sort of light bleed over into this area. But if this person is, say, tucked behind this building and crossing not exactly in the crosswalk, but up here higher, closer to where the stop sign is, as soon as that person starts to make that right-hand turn, they're essentially going to be in darkness. The first utility pole up the street is all the way up here, 100 yards up. So, a couple of options here. You can tweak this light, kind of twist it and angle it so that it's sort of at a 45 to the roadway in order to get some of the, side lighting going over that crosswalk. But on other instances where you don't have the ability to turn that light because of, other, transformers or other infrastructure on the pole that may prevent it, utility lines, then, your options are very limited, short of essentially excavating a hole here and placing a new pole. In which case you have to excavate the sidewalk in order to tap into power wherever the nearest power source may be, or potentially run secondary lines. So you are getting into something that's a little more invasive and a little more costly. Now, I think the instances of this are pretty limited, but it is something that as a sort of in a long-term look at improving the overall lighting along this corridor and its side streets, that's something that we may need to, sort of strongly dig into for sort of a secondary phase of this, if that's something that the city desires.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Sure thing.
This is Jamie Hagan. Using that example that you just had up, I'm wondering, is there a possibility of putting like a secondary light lower on the pole that's more at pedestrian level? Not just relying on that super high fixture way at the top of the pole.
Typically the answer to that is no, simply because if you can see my cursor, this space here between these are telecom lines down here on the lower side. This up here is your secondary lines. Up top is your primary lines. So the way that the utility has designed this is this space between the secondary and these telecommunication lines is the area where you can mount equipment such as streetlights. And mounting anything below that height means you have to bring secondary power down the pole. into essentially an area that's not permitted. And part of the reason why it's not permitted really is because the people who work in this telecom space, they don't have the types of certifications and safety training to be in a space where there is, high voltage lines. So that's why you see, particularly, across the state of Rhode Island, you don't see any sort of decorative things that are mounted to the lower portion of the pole, because if someone comes to work on these telecom lines and there's power in this space, then they're not allowed to operate there.
Thanks for that explanation. That makes total sense. I wouldn't have thought of that. Is there a way to add something to the mast, if that's the term, that holds the primary light that kind of points down, but is still wired up high? I know we got some floodlights added over by the Branch Ave intersection that do an amazing job of like a crosswalk that's not exactly close to the pole. I'm just wondering if there's a way to project light.
There is. So, this is the other thing that we are sort of exploring in the event where we're looking at probably a higher, I'm going to back out here for a second, higher traffic area. Then, what we're exploring is the possibility of just adding a second light on that pole. So I'm trying to find it here. Here we go. Let me drop into this area here. So as you can see, this is a pretty big intersection, pretty wide area. You do have a light here over the North Main Street crosswalk. But as you can see, we have a similar situation here with this crosswalk here for White Street. So we have a light that's down here, but that's really not servicing this area. So what we've asked Rhode Island Energy is, can we mount a light on this pole facing White Street? So you would actually have two street lights on this particular pole. Now, again, Rhode Island Energy won't always approve that because of, pole capacity, other items on the pole, wind shear concerns with the capability of the pole itself based on its age and its, classification. So, there are a number of things to consider there, but if they grant us permission, then, that would be the approach for a situation like this. So yes, we are exploring, other options. We tend to shy away from floods as much as we possibly can, because floods, they create a great deal of confusion and glare. I mean, glare is the largest concern with floodlights, because they're really intended to light up a very large area, and they are essentially forward facing. So particularly when it rains, the glare from a floodlight that is not pointed directly at the ground can be blinding. But again, when I say they can create confusion, if you were, think back to when the city decided to acquire their lights and convert the lights to LED in the first place. We did a citywide audit of the lighting, and every time you see a floodlight, it's pointed at a lot of times at a business or at a private parking lot. And so then no one knows who owns it. No one knows who's paying the bill for it. And then a lot of times they end up getting turned off without really anyone knowing why that is the case. So I think there's one, if I'm not mistaken, up, might be further up. Anyways, that's sort of the challenge that you face with floodlights. They're really, what they're intended to do is not light roadways. Now, we put them at Branch Ave because our options were extremely limited, and that the lack of lighting right there at that sort of high-speed right turn on the southbound side was incredibly dangerous, and there's really very few options short of digging up a portion of the roadway there. So as a stopgap measure, the floods were put in to light those crosswalks there at Branch at the south end of the burial ground.
Last on the table, I have a question for Brian while we're at a pause. Okay.
Very nice, very though.
Yeah, this is awesome, Brian. This is so exciting. So it sounds like the lighting here, the Whole Foods the lighting is on order to arrive by the end of April, and then installation will occur. Kyle and I will follow up to connect with Brian as well as with Sean to make sure we can get all the permits expedited as fast as possible for everything. And I'll also follow up with Rhode Island Energy, about lag time.
Yeah, and I think as a second phase, looking at some of these challenges with the side streets and really trying to navigate some of the hurdles and the obstacles is gonna be like our next line of thought. As well.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you, one, for all this awesome work and also for being here and showing this to us. I'm like super pumped.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I think the lights there at the University Marketplace are going to be really nice. I think they're going to make a dramatic difference both from a safety standpoint, but also from an ambiance standpoint. So yeah, I think you guys made the right choice with those particular fixtures and the approach that we're going to end up taking here.
Thank you so much. While we still have any final questions? Looking around, Brian? Okay. Thank you, Brian. We'll leave you have the rest of your night, but really appreciate you popping in.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
No, appreciate you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, okay. Can we please read item 2 into the agenda, please?
Update regarding the CDBG project, the only street sibling, presentation by Nate Armstrong, traffic engineer.
And Nate, do you have an update for us? I believe you do on the project that we're funding through CDBG. Oh my God, I was gonna say that. CDBG.
I don't know what that stands for.
Yeah, community development block grants.
Yeah.
And so, there are eligible, partial is the wrong word, but districts within wards that are eligible for CDBG. And so it has to meet certain income and other restrictions. And so only certain parts of Ward 3 are eligible, but this area is in that eligibility section. It can only be used for like permanent, infrastructure. And so things that are quite heavy, like what we're potentially getting at Lily.
So the, I mean, it's not, I don't really have a plan to present here. I think this is more of a discussion.
Yeah,
We did provide, Rosie Jaswell did put together a concept plan that, in addition to the, striping and alignment changes that benefit North Main and only, there were a couple items on this sheet that are really traffic related, but item 3 and 4 are the two items, that I think we're talking about here tonight. I think we just provided this as a visual to kind of discuss through some thoughts of, how to bring this concept to a design. I think we're looking at basically some striping improvements and then some along that striping. We talked about a number of things to really prevent people from driving into the striping and everything. I mean, the whole idea. I think we talked about planners, flex posts. I think, to be discussed is really, having something that's, gonna be rigid enough to prevent cars from driving in, but, the point I brought up is something not too rigid. You're really creating a barrier for a car that goes off the road or something where you're gonna create a more severe accident. So we understand we're trying to balance that with pedestrian safety. But I think you're gonna need something there to be besides striping to prevent people. But I think if you look at what Rosie had here, I think the whole idea is not to have that free right for people coming off a benefit, or even people on North Main Street to take that right turn quickly across the crosswalk onto Only Street. So I think, one of the things we're considering is trying to make that more of a T intersection at the end of Benefit, rather than making it a yield, bringing that to a T. I think you also have a side street there, Burrs Lane, so maybe kind of an extension there and actually make that a T, so people have better visibility. A driver will be able to see the cars turning left, see the cars to the left of them on North Main Street to find a gap. We did go out there and take some measurements on safe stopping sight distance. So there is, I think it was over 500 feet. So someone stopped, they should be able to have proper visibility of cars on the road there. But
Yeah, go
Is
ahead.
it a good time to ask questions as we go? or-
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
So-
it's part of the discussion.
Cause I mean, I don't know what the answer is for this, because that right turn from, like, when you're going north, whether it's on North Main or on Benefit and only, it's tricky because it's when it's right on green. That can be a problem, because when you're crossing, they have a green light. So they're turn, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not even a right on red issue, it's a right on green,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is normal. So
Right.
like what? I don't know what can be done about that. I
Right.
don't know, like, I don't know if that's. you're working
Yeah,
on
I think, well,
something
I think,
about-
yeah, I mean, you're gonna allow, I mean, there's no left turn here, but, you have to allow turns. But you're not gonna, you're not,
When can you allow,
but-
because
right, so
you get what I'm saying.
it will at least be a harder right.
Yeah, like once you get more, to tighten it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So folks have to take the turn a little bit slower, especially if there's barriers there.
Yeah.
Even when the barriers go up for the bike lane in the summer, as now, folks are kind of forced to make that turn a little bit.
Yeah, because they cut
slower.
through the.
Yeah, exactly.
that
They're all
parking lot.
driving through the striping there now. So if we put some barriers there, then it kind of forces people to actually slow down and make that turn. And I think the
And you
signal
think that would do
changes.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
Because-
in combination with the signal changes that have already been implemented, so those first two are already implemented. They were kind of recommended and implemented through the road safety audit, and having that the LPI, so the head start for pedestrians as well. Kind of especially in combination with the no right turn on red. So those cars that are approached that intersection, they can't turn when it's red. And then the pedestrian gets the head start before it even turns green. So like, there's that kind of,
So would this be
Necessity.
almost like a full, I mean, I guess I'm asking both of you, but like a full P, like an angle there instead of,
you mean that benefit will actually have to stop and yield into the right turn lane, the right travel lane on North Main Street. Rather than just,
yeah. So
I
there's
mean,
like,
there is a stop sign there, but they won't. But a lot of people just roll through the stop and use that as a right turn lane and don't have to yield.
you're talking about going right off of Olney, or are you talking about?
No.
Benefit.
Yeah.
Benefit.
but like even, we could make that turn a little bit tighter, but like there's some engineering that needs to go into that to make sure
Yeah.
that like a larger truck that's making that turn isn't then gonna hit a barrier. So there's a little bit of, refining that would need to be done, but the tighter we can make that turn, the better, really.
Lindsay, the question I have for you is like, what barriers would you recommend? So this drawing looks awesome and I'm grateful for it. Like, what would you recommend that we put in there besides just flex posts? Like, would it be a planter? Would it, like, what can we purchase with the CDBG money that would implement this kind of strategy?
Yeah, I have seen kind of the larger, like the self-watering planters. They're a lot more substantial. But they're also, they have a little bit of give if a
Yeah.
vehicle was to kind of crash into them. So I have seen those used kind of in similar instances as this. So I think that could be a pretty good
Yeah.
option. There's also like the kind of lower profile concrete curb stops in combination with flex posts. So there's a lot of different kind of barrier
Yeah.
treatments that are possible here.
Yeah, I've seen some plastic planters,
Mhm.
in some cases that's been used in this situation to make a curve a lot sharper. It was kind of a similar situation.
Are we thinking something solid enough that like if a car hit it and a pedestrian was on the other side, it would offer some protection? Or is it more kind of a deterrent to cars, like to kind of make drivers take it seriously as a barrier?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you want to make sure that they don't drive through that,
Right.
because the striping isn't,
Yeah, the striping.
it's not going to stop everybody, especially people a little less responsible.
Yeah.
And something more substantial is gonna last a little longer too.
Yeah.
The flexible is really,
Hmm.
regardless of the design,
Yeah.
especially when you have turning traffic, don't last as much. So maybe it's a combination of both.
I guess I asked that question kind of looking at that crosswalk, it's gotta be like, what, 70 feet, something like that?
Yeah.
So if we have an LPI and I start crossing northbound through the crosswalk, I'm gonna spend most of the if I start at the curb, I'm gonna spend most of the LPI kind of getting to what becomes the de facto roadway when we put some barriers up. So I'm wondering if we can set this up in a way that there's something, like if we had a concrete planter there that would like actually stop the
Yeah.
car, is that a spot where pedestrian could wait next to the planter, and then like use the LPI to like actually start moving through the travel.
Like the pedestrian starts further in.
Yeah, like,
and
you know,
that's,
Way that extends.
that's the idea. If we can put some type of barrier that will, you know,
But
make
like, I
pedestrians
wouldn't-
comfortable enough to go beyond the curb to the edge of where the stripe line is.
Yeah, you would just need to be cognizant of like the accessibility aspect. So like you would have to have a detectable warning panel where you expect pedestrians to then stand, which I have seen. Yeah, I have seen that in a temporary condition, but again, like it needs more substantial barriers in order to kind of make that
Yeah, I
a
feel like if
formal
I was
new
gonna
spot to
stand
start.
there, I
Yeah,
would want like concrete, not
Right,
like a
right.
plastic thing.
yeah.
Right,
Can the concrete that we talking about be more short term? Right, and then think about bumping out curb and because that's gonna require maybe the utility over the curb line. That's
Yeah,
kind
sure.
of a moderate money thing, maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's-
So that's.
yeah, that's a little more expensive. Yeah, I mean, you know, so, you know, as we look into taking a concept into final design, there's a little bit to look at here.
And
I
what is
think-
that timeline to take this
I-
to the
you know-
concept to actually, because spring is here.
Yeah.
I mean, saying that now it's gonna snow or something, so I know it's
Yeah.
hard to study, but like,
I think, I gotta kind of make a decision whether it seems like a simple design. You know, as we talked tonight, there's a few things that we need to include there. In this, so it may be something where we need to bring in a consultant and, which we can do fairly quickly. And try to get a plan together, but it could be late spring when we get something like this in. If we really, it depends on how much. You know, what we're talking about in terms of getting planters or whatnot, I mean, you know, striping can be done in the spring, but I think we probably should, just looking at some of the commitments I have and our ability to do it in-house, is probably get a consultant on board, which we have on-call consultants, so it's something we can do fairly quickly. And try to get this designed and in construction, spring or summer,
okay.
so
It's the one.
that's the next step, I think.
I think the one thing with kind of tightening up this lane and just the way that the signal infrastructure is today. I think the placement of the no right turn on red signage will be really important
Yep.
because you're kind of moving everything
Yeah.
further away
Yeah,
from the
that's-
sidewalk. So like
Yep.
the no right turn on red signage almost needs to be in that like striped off area. So just thinking through that, or whether it needs to be mounted on the mast arm, or you know, what might make the most sense.
Yeah.
As well, when we kind of do this curb extension, we might consider, like, you could consider like moving up that stop bar. Depending on how far back it is from the signal heads today, it seems like really far back from the signal heads right now. I think you only need like 40 feet.
40 feet, yeah.
Yeah, so you can maybe scooch that up, and then maybe that'll make everything a little bit tighter and make those signs a little bit more visible.
Yep.
Because it all just seems really spread out right now, and
Maybe
I don't know that.
slowly,
Yeah, and there's like a bunch of like yield to pedestrians in the
Yeah, that's all,
crosswalk, but the signs are like back here
That's-
and like
that's-
off to the side.
it's all gonna be thought through.
Yeah,
The other thing is, another reason to make that a T coming in Benefit Street to North Main is you actually have a place for stop sign.
Mhm, exactly. So that would
Yeah,
also need to be a
yeah.
curb extension.
You know, I mean, you know, I mean, we would probably put some of a barrier to bring that into it, to actually, you know,
Mhm.
The
And
state
then-
level, we use quick curb, just, you know, have a curbing, but then also has the delineators coming up from that, we did it for like wrong way driving locations, and it holds up pretty well, better than, you know, just the standing delineators that we've used in locations.
And then the last thing
yeah.
that I, you know,
talk
didn't-
about the ones we have on Empire. I think that's,
Oh, maybe you do,
yeah, the long base.
yeah.
It depends, if there's turning traffic, if there's truck traffic, they don't last, but yeah, that's something we gotta think through. That's another reason to have something more substantial.
Mhm.
Um,
And
Purpose.
I'd say the other thing to consider here, especially with the barrier placement, is to make sure we're still kind of leaving a gap or a channel for bikes to potentially still use.
Yeah.
So that they don't
Because if
have
you
to
move
like then
forward,
turn.
yeah.
backwards.
If you move the pedestrians forward, the cyclists still need to.
Mhm. Kind of
Get around that
get
side.
through, and then even beside in through here. I know that like there was a neighborhood greenway design that was shown to Green and Complete Streets Advisory Council, I think a year or two ago. That kind of formalized that little bike connection and had like actual, like a little green striping connection, so it might be worth taking a look at that. And in kind of incorporating that idea into this as well.
That would be like behind the barriers.
Yeah, so it's like the whole curb extension, but then maybe there's like an actual little bike lane connection just to like get you to that crosswalk. There were two more spots, at least two more spots in here I'm wondering about. So one of them is when you're walking north on North Main Street. And you're on the right side of the road. I now don't really know where I'm supposed to cross. Like on Benefit, having like an actual crosswalk there. But yeah, and if it's super inconvenient, like if it's like entirely perpendicular, like people probably aren't gonna use it anyway. But it's like, it's not even clear where you're supposed to cross. And then it's always this thing where you're like, who has right of way? Am I allowed to cross? You know what I mean? Because there's people coming up Benefit too. So I guess, is that something that is part of this? I mean, it's
yeah,
like, it's one intersection and now I'm looking all the way back there. to
You're right,
Benefit,
there's
you
not
know?
there's not a clear way.
Yeah.
That's people walking up from downtown.
Yeah.
it's
Which is
not a
me,
clear way.
like every day.
I mean,
So-
you know, the stop, you know, if you do incorporate that as a T intersection, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think you would actually go perpendicular across Benefit Street, and just have a crosswalk that isn't necessarily at the stop bar.
Yeah, like where the actual built median ends.
Yeah,
But then you would need to actually construct some curb ramps, right? Or unless you would use it like temporary materials to create a bit of a curb ramp. Because you can't really stripe.
yeah, you could do
crosswalk.
that. I think it's,
But see, if it's perpendicular and someone's going that way, there's no way they're gonna actually go straight.
Yeah, but at least it's like.
I don't know if it's like
some-
a
a visual,
dentist.
a visual, like, it's a visual indication to vehicles that people will cross there, whether or not they kind of follow the exact striping, I think.
Yeah.
It still
Yeah.
kind of does. the trick.
Part of the striping. The spring.
yeah, we do have, we're putting together a plan right now. I mean, this isn't a huge amount of striping. I think it's like, you know, as we talk here, we look at a lot of things we have to think through that may actually cost some money, like if we want to put that crosswalk there across Benefit Street, you know.
Yeah.
I think you should put a wheelchair ramps in. I think it's been debated whether you actually need to, but I think assuming that you need to put curbs ramps on either end or across when you put a new crosswalk in.
Well, so what happens? Sorry.
I was just, at the state level and not sure if it applies to city, but if we're striping a crosswalk, you have to have the ADA ramps in as well, so I know. We get a lot of color, why can't you just stripe it?
Yeah.
We have to put the ramps.
We've gotten some mixed feedback from actual EDA and that, but you know, that discussion happened a little while ago, but yeah. So.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I think Pro-ID has been recently adopted in that, and it's very much more stringent. Not striping things if there's not ramps there.
Yeah, but whether or not there's stripes. Yeah.
No, I
have some set of order, so folks can
Thank
actually,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I want to say like strenuously, I think we should build an infrastructure that everyone
Yeah.
can use.
Yeah.
I understand the frustration if, there should be a crosswalk there, it seems easy, but like,
Yeah.
if you set something up where somebody gets there and then realizes that they're stuck on the sidewalk,
Yeah.
that's not okay, and I guess. My question is, what happens now, let's say I'm using a wheelchair, or mobility scooter or device. If I get up to that little island coming north, what are my options? Like, how do I get off that? What's the nearest curb ramp? Like, do I have to turn around and go back down the hill?
And Jamie, I was saying kind of the same thing, because people are walking there now, whether or not,
Yeah.
so the crosswalk doesn't actually create the need
for it to be accessible, because people are already, like, it already should be accessible, it's already a place that
Right,
people
I
are
guess
gonna
that's,
cross.
either
so-
way, I guess. We need a fix for the
Yeah.
accessibility.
Yeah, it looks like there's wheelchair ramps on both corners of Burrs Lane, so he did put a crosswalk across.
Oh, Bird Lane, okay.
Yeah.
It goes across the lane, though,
But how many-
like that, it
yeah.
doesn't go across, benefit. So, but if this part had a curve. Yeah, it's tough though, because that nose gets so narrow, so in order to like build an ADA accessible ramp, I'm sure you're gonna have
Yeah.
to chase it all the way back anyway.
Yeah, there is no ramp on the nose, but I'm just saying, if you did build one there, it looks like there might be one. Across the way, hopefully it complies with standards.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this now, because we're turning our attention to this for other reasons, it looks like we have kind of a major accessibility issue here, there's no way off of that.
But I think it goes back to the beginning of this model. What is short term that we can do quickly?
Mhm.
What is medium and long term?
Yeah.
Obviously, this whole thing is like.
Yeah.
It's gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, it may be, it could be, depending on what's required, a two-phase improvement.
But we might get a win quickly.
Yes.
Some striping, maybe some of the linear things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like a temporary curve ramp that we can include, like, we should be thinking about that. I hear your point.
I want the most amount of wins, right? away.
If the striping was concrete, like if this was built out, then there'd be more room, right? Because you said that, oh, that point is so small, but if this was all built this out, were then, built-
Yeah,
then the crosswalk should be here
Yeah.
at the stop bar. So if that was all built out, then the ramps would be going across there, right?
And
So
that would be
then-
more convenient too, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone, it's just expecting a pedestrian to cross in an efficient way isn't really reasonable, but
Yeah, so
that
then
would be more
so then
efficient.
if you put that investment into building ramps here, when, the end goal is maybe to build this out more formally and put an actual crosswalk in, that's where I get the point of, near term versus kind of longer term.
If this were all.
But like if
that would
this
be
one back
possible.
here can be temporary for now, that's also.
Are there
So,
kind
yeah.
of affordable options that we could roll
Yeah.
out, just sort of get us through the next year?
Mhm.
seems like next steps of me, you're putting a plan together for both the striping and then also the actual infrastructure we can buy with the CDBG money. And maybe Kyle and I follow up with you in like
Yeah,
a short period of time, to
Yeah.
see where that's at.
we can talk about funding, in terms of, if there's any restrictions on CDBG, so.
Yeah, Kyle was all this.
Yeah,
It has to be like physical infrastructure. but,
right,
And permanent, but permanent can be. Permanent can be like concrete, it can be other things, like. we can talk.
We'll definitely assess our options, we can sit down.
Any other thoughts on this intersection and the potential improvements? I'm super pumped that we're gonna make this happen. Yeah. Rich?
One more, so. Because all three of these crosses are tough, so there's crossing benefit, there's crossing this part of Olney. But then crossing the part with the slip lane is also tricky.
Yeah.
I'm not even certain whether there's a no right on red there.
Yeah.
But if
That's
there
what-
is, they
Yeah.
still do though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like people still turn even when it's red.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know, like Rosie, you know better what actually works and improves things like that, but what can we do there?
It might be the place, again, the placement of the sign, because like the stop bar is up here and the sign's back here. So like, it might need to be up on the mast arm, but also it's a double red arrow,
It's
which
like
already
double red
means like
arrow.
don't
Do not
turn,
turn red.
yeah, don't turn when it's red. Yeah,
Like making a choice.
but we might need a redundant sign like up there, so like it could be another.
It sounds like an
Potential option.
opportunity to ask the police to make sure they're enforcing no right turn on red.
Or the, red light cameras. And
Yeah.
that's part of the town, that.
But I wonder if they're making that choice though, because they think I'm turning right on red and they think this is allowed.
Yeah.
There's widespread misunderstanding.
Yeah.
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 I will say though, I turn here a lot and that is a pretty clear light. It's like,
Mhm.
it's like a red arrow that's
Yeah.
like, do not turn right. There's like an
Oh,
arrow that's like,
right.
absolutely not. Like, it's a pretty clear like, oh, this is not okay. So it feels like an active choice.
Like, I wouldn't get that.
It is definitely an active.
Yeah, there's someone should definitely get, if there's turning right there, you should definitely take it.
Yeah,
I don't drive it, I just walk it, and it
Yeah.
happens all the time, so I'm like, oh, it must just not be clear.
Oh, yeah, as a driver, it feels pretty clear, like some of these are not clear, or
Yeah.
like the sign would be way back, like the slip lane by the Charles Gate. To turn right down, what is street is that?
Randall.
Charles
Yeah,
Gate.
that one, they're getting.
That is, the sign's like 4 feet back. So you
Yeah.
can totally be like, you know, whatever, until you're.
yeah, so that one might just need to move the sign, maybe like on.
And
the
maybe it's
median.
been because I haven't turned it recently, there's all the signs.
But there are possibly, right, I was gonna say, where we can put signs on the mast arms themselves, that can be helpful, so.
Yeah.
We'll see if that's an opportunity.
That one, this one just always drives me, because it does feel like an active choice that we're making, because it feels pretty clear, because that's,
Mhm.
as if someone drives that a lot.
People are making.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, I would. wish it should happen.
Because do you have a problem, Sean, with actually adding signage up on the last
Should I
one?
start?
We don't, the only
Load and stuff?
issue when you get wind loads when it's an older mast arm, but. Generally,
Yeah,
Is that
should be
next
fine.
one, like a-
so what, what? You guys. Want to review this at all?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll review it, but not necessarily a permit per se,
I
just a
don't
review.
think so.
Yeah,
It
State
is our-
Craft, State
Oh,
Craft
sorry.
Commission.
It's not changing any phasing or anything.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
it shouldn't be, but I wouldn't mind being part of the review,
Okay.
right, and comment.
Any other comments about this intersection? Cool, so Kyle and I will follow up, meet Sean. I feel like half this meeting, I'm just looking at Kyle, like, keep me on track. Any other comments around the table about this stuff? Awesome, okay, then I did leave time for, overall updates on implementation of recommendations of the North Main Street Task Force, which I'm just now going to the record, sorry, my bad. I guess it was after that. I had a few quick updates and then I'll, leave time around the table, and then there's some updates that are in process and I'll be able to have next time. But one is, and some folks, emailed me that they saw this on the traffic safety commission. We will have updated signage by the sandwich hut. There was no parking, at the sandwich hut. And there's just like no place to park, and that just seemed really unfair for that small stretch, and so it's gonna be 15-minute parking. So that folks aren't blocking views, but they're also not, it's not having a negative economic impact on the two small businesses in the area, so just as a heads up on that. We just got an update on daylighting, and then we are working through the stiff contracting process, so no actual like yay moment yet, but like that is a process that's underway. And so excited to have that be a next phase of this task force finally, in the coming months of like working through that process and what that design engineer and all of that process will look like. So, those are my main updates. And the last one is I have reached out again to the business owners for two of the most egregious, I'm gonna call it egregious, which is what I said in my letter to them, of the empty lots. One of them has now reached back out to me, so we're setting up a time to talk, in the near future, to figure out what we can do to encourage development in some of those vacant spots. So I'm also meeting with a few developers. It's not really ready for formal updates yet, but just, you know, that is where it's happening now, behind the scenes. And any other updates around the table on things that have happened in the interim? Okay. Do you have anything to-
Well, I think I lied from the last meeting, I said I'd have the final RSA document now, I still have it, just last minute internal review, but that will be coming out soon. Before that's.
Yeah,
I can ask some questions about
yeah, ask some questions,
things.
yeah.
So I wanted to bring up, Sean, the thing that I had emailed you about Barbara Leonard today, if you saw that, I'll refresh for everybody.
Yeah,
I took a walk a couple weekends ago, I think, just to kind of like check up on, I know we had some questions about whether LPI had been implemented everywhere. Signs, things look pretty good, except for Barbara Leonard Way, which is still not LPI. But the other thing I found is this, like on a Sunday
What room
afternoon.
is that? I'm sorry.
Barbara Leonard Way. So I did this on a Sunday afternoon when traffic was light, probably partly by design, because it's nicer time to be on North Main Street. But I made a bunch of the crossings. When I got to Barbara Leonard Way, I was very deliberate, even though traffic was light, to like wait for the walk signal and everything. And that's like a 2-minute cycle, with the coordinated, 3 signals, I think. And just in the one cycle, when I was waiting for my turn to walk, I saw 3 cars run red lights. 2 of them were taking the turn from Barbara Leonard Way southbound onto North Main Street. Car had stopped and was waiting for the light. Car behind it stopped, started honking, eventually went over the yellow center line and around the car that was stopped at the light to make a right turn. Another car behind it followed and did the same. Meanwhile, another car that was waiting to make the left turn onto Barbara Leonard Way. I'm sorry, waiting to make a U-turn at that left turn lane. Eventually just got tired of waiting and turned and came around. I don't know what the fix for this is, but I know that long cycle time when traffic is light feels like as a pedestrian standing there, feels like forever waiting for your turn, particularly when there was like nobody coming and I was like, no, I'm gonna wait for the light for like 2 minutes. But I think for drivers especially, I think with the new no turn on red, I think they sort of don't understand why they're being asked to sit there when there's like nobody coming. And I think for drivers who are trying to follow the law, it's like there's this culture of other drivers getting angry and honking and doing illegal things around. Again, I don't think the fix, but I think we should be thinking about that, particularly for the low traffic times. Like maybe that makes sense when there's a lot of cars coming and you just kind of have to wait your turn, but there's nobody around, right? Like want to do what they do. So I don't know if there's a way to like retime the signals on like late at night, weekends when there's low traffic for that to not be a full 2 minutes. Maybe we break I know this is it creates issues with the buses if we break the coordinated thing. So I know it's a big discussion, but I want us to just be like kind of thinking about solutions for that. Not putting you on the spot to come up with anything, Sean, but.
That's something that you get that driver frustration, we get pedestrian frustration, because you're waiting, to cross for a long time, because you try to balance that as best you can, but that, human factor is so significant.
The other thing I wanted to mention related to that, like when the light finally turned and it was my turn, the cars that had waited at the no turn on red also finally had a green light and started pulling out. And so it sort of felt a little bit like the unintended consequence of the no turn on red is like it put us all in the same spot at the same time. Maybe this all just wants to exclusive pedestrian phase.
Jamie, I've had that same thing in other intersections, like I feel like,
I think you
I
mentioned
feel like I'm
last
supposed
meeting.
to like know right on red. That's supposed to be a good thing, but there are points
Makes
when
it maybe harder.
it means that they're turning, we finally get our opportunity at the same time. And it's like that on Doyle, it's like that, like Doyle, crossing North Main Street from Jerry's to Charles Gate.
And the LPS
And then-
helped with that, right? Like where they. I think-
Yeah, LPS can help with that too, but it's still, it's weird because sometimes I'm like, it would be actually great if they were turning on red right now so that they're not trying to go when I want to go. But, but I'm supposed to like, no, right on red.
I was just gonna say, 5 years from Boston, I learned to drive in Boston. I think Rhode Island's driving culture is crazy. Like, I have never seen I used to work in the car insurance, like, I've never seen worse driving in my life than in this state. In Massachusetts, it's one of the only states in the country that has the pedestrian always has the right of way in their state law, like in Maine. That's not a thing here. So I think that is possibly one of the factors. Obviously, we can do what we can with First Maine, but I've just experienced it everywhere since moving here. And I didn't think it'd be that much of a difference going from Mass to Rhode Island, but it's kind of.
But pedestrians do have right of way when we are crossing with a signal and someone else is turning. Right?
Yes.
We always do.
Yeah.
Because I've had times where drivers have cussed me out, doing like all sorts of names.
Should yield the
Yeah.
floor.
When I have a walk, like, you know, like it's,
I wish we could solve all that.
Laura,
I just wanted to make a comment.
but the no right of way can set that up
What's that?
sometimes
Yeah.
unintentional.
But maybe this is where more of the red light camera enforcement can eventually, get people to like actually say, all right, it's a no turn on red, like I got a ticket last time, I'm gonna stop doing this, And again, that doesn't help with the conflict there, but I think it maybe solves, if you're trying to make the other crossing and somebody's trying to, you're on the side street, somebody's trying to turn on North Main Street. Well, you do want that driver to stop and not go through the red light.
I think a red light camera does like turn on red. It usually just takes a 1 picture when it turns red, then
No, we got a couple. We got a couple, there's one in Allen's Avenue, one in
And it shows right hand turns.
Yeah,
If I stop at the red light, wait.
But there's not many, but there's a couple.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, we've been having some discussions about that. I think, the equipment is limited.
Right.
It's gotta go at a certain speed, but there is a possibility to issue red light running cameras for, turns on red, when there's a no turn on red, so.
I do think this,
We discussed that last time, right?
Yeah.
Pocket, I'm sorry, I feel like I was in how I just said that, but it creates chaos in the Zoom.
As far as the timing on a red light, that should be queued. I mean, that's those things are on the ground, so if there's nobody traveling over it, that computer right now is supposed to turn green or make that light change. So if there's a problem with that, it's just computer error.
Well, we have some lights that have coordinated phases that
Right.
go together, and that stretch in particular that I'm talking about is like 3 lights.
Yeah,
that
it
are
shuts that
timed
off
together.
when it's coordinated.
And then I think Rachel
loops.
or Z both wanted to hop in.
I was just saying, we talked about that last time, right? You said that it takes better technology in the cameras in order to get the right turn.
Yeah.
Because it's,
There's
Slower.
something to the point of it, there's a certain speed that it doesn't pick it up. I don't know exactly, when it's a very low speed. I think they mentioned 14 miles per hour. But I don't know. I'm not an expert on
And they-
the red light running camera technology, but yeah. But
and there's like a
does,
price difference.
it does, enable it at some speed, it is able to pick that up and issue tickets. Turns on.
Oh, I was just wanting to echo what Jamie said about cycle lengths and that really tying into compliance, especially when when it feels like you're waiting around for nobody. That can really lead to compliance issues. So if there's a need for kind of extended coordination between multiple signals during peak hours, then breaking that coordination off of peak hours could be beneficial for that reason.
At least like explore and model that and see if that could be a thing that would work, that wouldn't slow down the buses, or, like, see if there's like. Weekend phasing that would still
Yeah.
give us what we need.
TSP could also just change the light for the buses, and not
Yeah.
not rely on the coordination.
Are there any updates on that? Because didn't Zach kind
Yeah,
of
Zach said,
semi-pitch that?
anything you'd
one
like
time?
to share?
The
Yeah.
Meanwhile, being a project planner for 5 years, sir.
Sorry.
Yeah, so in terms of TSP on North Main, all the intersections except one, which we're working through right out, because there's some common requiring things you have to work through, but it sounds like Ocean State's supposed to be through this week. Everything is set up, we just have to run some testing just to make sure the signals are reporting correctly. And then we just have to do some vehicle modifications on our end, so we should be seeing stuff by the end of the spring. There's just some last minute stuff we have to do, so there should be some improvements that we have. And that there's some data sharing we have to do with that, just to see how many calls are being made, what does that mean from cycle times, and then there will be further discussion about the signalization. So we want to like, continue having the larger signalization conversation. That goes to your point asking about things, Jay, is we need to run enough data before I can say with some greater certainty about changing up cycles. But I do appreciate you on that, Sean, and I have an earlier conversation.
Thank you for that. Any other updates or questions about the recommendations, about implementation?
One more quick question. for
Yeah,
Sean.
please.
John, I want to remind you, we had talked a while back about pedestrian and cyclist counts. It sounded like you had some data on that.
I
But
do.
I never.
I'll share them.
That would be great,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay, maybe next time we can do that. That is my other update is, it's probably not an April meeting and go to May. April is just like really hard to schedule, given that there's, other meetings using this room and then there's budget address. So just, scheduling conflict conversation, which is proven, this is where we have meetings and there are many committees. Yeah, okay, there was another meeting that we booted out, who had to be across the way. The DPW committee. Just as a heads up, I think the next one will be in May, and I apologize for that, but there are just conflicts. that are Unavoidable.
Future agenda question, we had a couple meetings ago, we were gonna have an update on the speed study.
Yeah, that is in the works.
A couple of things.
Yeah.
I got one data point, right, and then I lost the two guys that did that. One I went to the academy, the other one I went to my motorcycle, my car. I was on the bike, so I don't have anybody effectively doing that right now consistently. So, yeah, because that impacted me doing another thing. On all the same points. So the same length of time that it collected last January,
Yeah.
and I only won that. Nothing stood out, to be honest with you, nothing was dramatically.
In terms of the change.
Yeah. But I will say, be careful what I say here, but, so when they did that, it was after the Christmas holiday, it was after the break, and, there's been probably about 3 or 4 weeks of time that we haven't been out there doing much consistent enforcement, so I don't know that. I wanted it done sooner, but some things changed fiscally, where I lost some of the money, you know, I had for direct control, so. We're gonna try to get that data point so we can ask Ryan, see if there's some extra, unused funding from the other side. Which I was told there may be.
Yeah.
But this was like a follow to that.
Related to this, we've got a, Streets Coalition volunteer who's, trying to build, like, basically a $200 speed camera platform. If we can get that worked out, my fantasy is to be able to, like, put some of our own devices out there and we collect.
Well, what I do like about those, studies is you keep a very nice, very always, you can do different things with them. So they can look like they're turned off, which is
Right.
we talked about here, right? People are like, oh, they're not working, no, they're working, we're trying to catch data that was more. Real time, real world, and I think that did work, but there's only a couple of people that run them, and I lost both of them in the short time.
Does anyone have? No. Any other updates on the table? Okay, I'm hopeful that in May I'll have some really positive updates, so, hold tight. There's a few things that like I was hoping to be able to say today that aren't quite ready, but should be ready, for when we meet in May. There's nothing else around the table. Does anyone in the public have public comment?
I'll just add to the.
And say your name, please, for the
Dylan
record.
Giles from Providence Streets Coalition, Kyle, and me, I'll connect with you about this. But the Streets Coalition is a grant for some possible planters and greenery for, you know, we're talking about planters.
Oh, was that great?
We are very optimistic about, I don't want to speak out of turn, but, yeah, if you have planters, we would love to plant things in them. And then also when you plant things, you need to maintain them and water them. So that was kind of all part of the grant. So, you know, we'd love to support the effort at Main Street and elsewhere. I think we talked about a couple of different locations for planters. So yeah, I'd like to connect with you on budget and see where we can fit into that.
And to say out loud, if you're doing planters and there's some plantings, let's connect on like the Summit Neighborhood Association does like a regular tree planting time, and maybe some of those people want to help with plantings and planters, so let me know if I can help.
Yeah, part of it's also like volunteer maintenance. We're gonna do like stipends to show people actually go do the thing that we ask.
Yeah.
Volunteers can be very unpredictable. And it's not just watering, it's also weeding, it's also like planters frequently become like trash cans for people who use. Also would love to have more trash cans on North Main Street.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll hopefully learn more. Future and hopefully support that work over the summer.
That's awesome. Any other public comment? Oh, that's yeah.
I know we moved on to the
No,
public,
we
we did our round
also
table,
over
but
public.
I have a late ad, which is, I was trying to think through the timing, especially in view of the not having an April meeting. Metro Connector high capacity transit project is moving along. We're doing the first round of route evaluation, or route segment evaluation, and I think we'll have some input of that on that by May, if not May, then definitely June. So, Zach, I don't know if you have a suggestion about which month might be better for an update, but if you're interested, we can do an update.
That would be better because
Would be
our
better?
target is we're
To
gonna,
get feedback.
yeah, because we would like feedback before we enter tier 2 evaluation.
Yep.
Which our target is to try and start that in June. So-
Okay, so May, okay, great.
So I'll work with Sarah and the council. There'll be information available ahead of that. We'll
Awesome, all right. Thank you, Sarah. That's exciting. Cool. Well, there's no further business, no further, okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Seconded.
Excellent, all in favor?
Okay.
Yay. You have anything to do? I'll send it to you.